The diner was nearly empty when Claire wiped the last of the tables. It was past midnight, and the only sound was the soft hum of the neon sign flickering outside. The warm scent of coffee and grease lingered in the air, though it had long ceased to be inviting. She sighed, stretching her sore arms. Just another quiet, lonely shift. It was always like this, especially in a town as small as Hollow Creek. Most of the regulars had cleared out by 10, leaving only the occasional trucker or drifter passing through. As she stepped outside to dump the trash, she heard a rustling near the dumpster. At first, she assumed it was a raccoon, but then she saw it. A thin, shivering dog, its ribs visible beneath matted fur. It watched her with large, sorrowful eyes, its tail thumping hesitantly against the cold pavement. Claire felt a pang of pity. She had always had a soft spot for animals, and this one looked particularly miserable. With one last glance at the diner's front window, making sure her boss, Greg, wasn't watching, she reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a leftover piece of meatloaf wrapped in a napkin. "Here, boy," she whispered, crouching down and extending the food. The dog sniffed the air cautiously before inching closer. It hesitated for only a moment before snatching the meal and devouring it in frantic bites. "There you go," she murmured, running a gentle hand down its bony back. The dog tensed at first, but then leaned into her touch, shivering. Claire. She jumped, nearly losing her balance as Greg's voice rang out from behind her. "What the hell are you doing?" he demanded, stepping outside with an irritated scowl. His gaze landed on the dog, and his expression darkened. "I told you not to feed strays. Get inside before it follows you in." Claire, clench your jaw. "It's just hungry." Greg crossed his arms. "And it'll keep coming back if you feed it. You want to be responsible for some mangy mutt camping outside my diner." The dog whimpered, shrinking back into the shadows. Claire's heart sank. "It's just one time," she insisted, but Greg was already shaking his head. "I don't pay you to run a dog shelter," he snapped. "Now get inside before I dock your pay for wasting food." Claire hesitated, but the look in Greg's eyes made it clear. Arguing wasn't an option. She cast one last regretful glance at the dog before stepping back into the diner. As she locked the door behind her, she could still see its silhouette in the dim streetlight, watching her with those sad, knowing eyes. That was the last normal night she would ever have. That night, sleep did not come easily. Claire tossed and turned, her mind restless. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the dog, thin and starving, its gaze pleading for help. She kept thinking about how it had shrunk away when Greg yelled, how its tail had tucked between its legs. Sometime after 2 a.m., exhaustion finally won, but sleep brought no peace. In her dream, she was back at the diner. It was dark, the neon sign outside barely flickering. The place was silent, too silent. She stood behind the counter, gripping a damp rag in her hands. Something was wrong. The air was thick, suffocating, as if the walls themselves were closing in. A faint scratching sound echoed from the kitchen, nails against tile. Claire's breath hitched. She stepped forward hesitantly, her shoes scuffing against the floor. The air smelled wrong. Not the usual mix of coffee and grease, but something metallic, something rotten. Another scrape. Her pulse quickened as she reached the kitchen door. It was slightly ajar. Slowly, carefully, she pushed it open. The lights inside flickered weakly, casting long, distorted shadows. And then she saw it. The dog sat in the middle of the kitchen, facing away from her. But it was wrong. Its body was too still, its breathing shallow. The fur along its back was wet, matted with something dark. "Hello," she whispered. The dog twitched. Her heart pounded. Something was off. Then, ever so slowly, it turned its head, but not the way it should have. Its neck twisted unnaturally, bones cracking as it had spun around completely. Its mouth stretched into a grotesque grin. Its eyes, once pleading, were now hollow, empty, and then it spoke. Claire. Her scream caught in her throat. The lights went out. Claire jolted awake, gasping for air. Her sheets were damp with sweat, her heart slamming against her ribs. She sat up, her hands trembling. "Just a dream," she muttered, rubbing her temples. just a dream. But it didn't feel like one. The room was unnervingly silent, the kind of silence that made her skin crawl. She glanced at the clock, 3:14 a.m. With a deep breath, she swung her legs over the bed and stood, heading toward the kitchen for a glass of water. Then she heard it, a faint scratching. Her blood turned to ice. The sound was coming from outside, slow, deliberate scrapes against her apartment door. She took a shaky step forward, pulse hammering in her ears. The air felt thick, suffocating, just like in her dream. She reached for the doorknob, hesitating. Another scratch, and then a soft whimper. Her breath caught in her throat. The dog. It was outside her door. But how? Her fingers hovered over the knob. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to not open it. But something deep inside whispered back, "What if it needs help?" She took a breath, and slowly, hesitantly, she turned the handle. The door creaked open an inch. Cold air seeped in. She peered outside. The hallway was empty. No dog, no sound, just darkness. A shudder ran down her spine as she closed the door again, bolting it shut. She turned back toward her bedroom, and that's when she saw it. A single wet paw print on her carpet. Inside. She hadn't let anything in. Had she? Her stomach twisted. The dream. The scratches. The whisper of her name. Claire was no longer alone, and something had followed her home. Claire stood frozen in the dim glow of her bedside lamp, her breath coming in short, uneven gasps. The single, wet paw print on her carpet glistened under the light. It wasn't possible. She had locked the door. Checked twice. The hallway was empty when she looked, but the print was there, undeniable. A damp, dark stain on her beige rug. Her fingers tightened into fists. Think, Claire, think. Maybe it was from earlier. Maybe the dog had brushed against her when she was outside the diner and she hadn't noticed. Maybe, scrape. The sound came from the far end of the hallway. Her throat tightened. Slow, deliberate, like nails dragging across the wooden floor. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to turn toward the sound. The hallway stretched in front of her, the shadows along the walls shifting in the dim light. Something was there. It was faint at first, a figure barely visible at the edge of the darkness. A shape crouched low to the ground. It didn't move, didn't breathe. Claire's pulse pounded in her ears as she inched forward. 1 step, 2. Her fingers twitched toward the light switch. She reached for it. The hallway light flickered on. Empty. Her stomach clenched. She could have sworn. Her hands trembled as she flipped the switch off again. Darkness swallowed the hallway. And this time, the figure was closer. A strangled gasp escaped her lips. Her mind screamed at her to run, to slam the door shut and never look back. But before she could move, the lamp beside her bed flickered and went out. Claire stumbled back, her heel catching on the rug. She hit the mattress hard, her hands gripping the sheets. The darkness pressed against her, thick and suffocating. Then the whisper came, low, guttural, right beside her ear. Claire. Her body jerked violently as she scrambled across the bed, heart hammering against her ribs. Her hand shot out, fumbling for the lamp switch. Light flooded the room, and there was nothing there. The air was still. The paw print was gone. Claire barely slept after that. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt something watching her. Every shadow in the room stretched a little too far, and every creak in the floor sounded like a whisper calling her name. When morning finally came, she stumbled out of bed, her body heavy with exhaustion. It wasn't real. It couldn't have been real. Just a dream. A hallucination from lack of sleep. Right? She forced herself through the motions of getting ready, brushing her hair, throwing on her uniform, sipping stale coffee that did little to clear the fog in her head. When she stepped outside, the morning sun was a weak comfort. She walked to work, keeping her eyes on the sidewalk, her thoughts tangled in the lingering unease from the night before. But as she neared the diner, she slowed. The stray dog sat near the dumpster, waiting. Claire hesitated. Its fur was still patchy and unkempt, but something was different. the way it stared at her, unblinking, like it knew something, like it had seen something. Her fingers twitched at her side. Her instinct screamed at her to turn around, walk away, but she didn't. Instead, she took a shaky step forward. "Hey, buddy." The dog didn't move, didn't even flinch. A strange, sinking feeling pulled in her stomach. Slowly, she knelt down. The dog's eyes locked onto hers, and as she looked closer, her breath caught in her throat. Its eyes weren't brown anymore. They were black, completely black. A chill ran down her spine. Her lips parted, a question on the tip of her tongue. But before she could speak, the dog turned and bolted behind the dumpster. Claire jumped to her feet, her pulse racing. Without thinking, she ran after it, skidding around a corner. But the alley was empty. The dog was gone, as if it had never been there at all. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Customers came and went, but Claire barely registered them. Her mind was stuck on the dog, the way it looked at her, the black eyes. By the time her shift ended, the sun was already setting. The diner was mostly empty, except for a couple of late-night regulars. Greg was in the back, counting cash. Claire wiped down the counter absent-mindedly, her mind elsewhere. Then the bell above the door jingled. She looked up. An old man stepped inside. She recognized him, Walter. He was a local, always mumbling about town history. No one cared to hear. But tonight, he looked different. His usual friendly demeanor was gone, replaced by something colder. His eyes settled on Claire, and he frowned. "You fed the stray, didn't you?" he said, voice low. Claire blinked. "Excuse me?" Walter stepped closer. "The black dog," he muttered. "You gave it food." A cold weight settled in Claire's chest. Walter sighed, rubbing his temple. "You shouldn't have done that." Claire swallowed hard. "Why?" The old man glanced around, as if making sure no one was listening. Then, in a hushed tone, he said, "There's something you need to know about that dog." Claire leaned in. Walter's voice was barely above a whisper. "It's not a dog." Claire's breath caught in her throat. Walter's words hung heavy in the air. "It's not a dog." The diner felt suddenly colder. The hum of the flickering neon sign outside, the only sound breaking the suffocating silence. Claire forced a shaky breath. "What will you mean?" Walter pulled out a stool and sat, rubbing his calloused hands together. His knuckles were gnarled with age, and his voice came slow, deliberate. "That thing you fed? It ain't no stray." "Not really." Claire swallowed hard. "Then what is it?" Walter's gaze darkened. "An omen." The air in the diner felt thick, pressing it on her from all sides. He continued, his voice low. "Long ago, this town wasn't what it is now. There was a family, a poor one, who lived out in the woods just past the old highway. People in town didn't pay them no mind, thought they were weird, kept to themselves. One winter, things got real bad for them. No food, no work. The father got desperate, tried stealing from the butcher in town." Walter exhaled sharply. "The butcher caught him. The town didn't take kindly to thieves back then, Claire. They dragged a man through the streets, beat him bloody, made an example of him. His wife and son watched the whole thing. And when he finally stopped moving, Walter's fingers drummed against the counter. They left his body for the dogs." Claire's stomach churned. "That's awful." Walter nodded grimly. "The family was never seen again. Not as people, anyway." A shiver ran down Claire's spine. "What does that have to do with the dog?" Walter's lips pressed into a thin line. "Not long after, the people involved in that man's death started seeing it. A black dog, always watching, always waiting. At first, it was just there, lurking in the corners of their vision. But then, strange things started happening. Nightmares, accidents, deaths." Claire stiffened. Walter's voice dropped even lower. "Some folks believe the wife, she cursed this town, said the people who wronged them would never find peace. And that black dog, that's no ordinary animal. It's a harbinger." Claire's skin prickled. "Harbinger of what?" Walter met her eyes. "Of something worse." A sharp knock at the diner window. made Claire jump. She turned quickly, heart hammering against her ribs. But it was just the wind rattling the old glass. The neon light outside flickered, casting erratic shadows across the walls. When she looked back, Walter had already stood up. "You need to be careful," he warned. "It came to you for a reason. And once you feed it," he shook his head, "it don't leave." Claire wanted to laugh it off. It was just an old town legend, a folktale. But she couldn't shake the cold dread curling in her gut. She forced a weak smile. Thanks to the story, Walter. He didn't return it. Instead, he leaned in, voice barely a whisper. "If you start dreaming of it, Claire, don't let it in." With that, he left, the diner bell jingling softly behind him. Claire stood there for a long moment, gripping the edge of the counter. Don't let it in. Her mind replayed the dream. The dog in the kitchen. The way its neck had twisted unnaturally. The whisper of her name. Claire shook herself. It was just a stupid ghost story. Just superstition. But then she remembered the paw print in her apartment. The scratching at her door. And she wasn't so sure anymore. The walk home felt longer that night. The streets were eerily quiet. The distant streetlights buzzing faintly. She kept her head down, hands shoved deep in her pockets, her breath fogging in the cold air. Then she heard it. Soft. Almost too soft to notice. Padded footsteps. Claire's heart stuttered. She stopped walking. The sound stopped too. Slowly, she turned her head. The street behind her was empty, but she felt it. A presence. Watching. Waiting. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to move. One foot in front of the other. Faster. Faster. Don't look back. Don't look back. She reached her apartment door, fumbling with the keys. Her fingers trembled as she shoved one into the lock. The door creaked open, and she stumbled inside, slamming it shut behind her. Silence. She pressed her back against the wood, her pulse racing. She was overreacting. She had to be. Taking a deep breath, she turned toward the hallway and stopped. A single wet paw print, leading toward her bedroom. Claire's stomach twisted into knots. Her breaths came faster, shallower. She forced herself forward, step by hesitant step. The hallway stretched before her, each shadow stretching a little too long, each creak beneath her feet echoing louder than it should. Her bedroom door was slightly ajar. Her fingers hovered over the handle. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. With one final breath, she pushed it open. The room was dark. Still, nothing was out of place. Then, her eyes fell to her bed. Her blankets were pulled back, rumpled, as if someone had been lying there. A lump rose in her throat. Slowly, she reached for the lamp, fingers brushing the switch. Something moved. A shift in the darkness. A shape in the corner. Claire's breath hitched. Two eyes, black as night, unblinking, watching her. A guttural growl filled the room, deep and unnatural. Her stomach dropped. It wasn't a dog. It had never been a dog. And now it was inside. Claire couldn't move. The creature crouched in the corner of her room, its black eyes gleaming in the dim glow of the streetlight filtering through her curtains. It was massive, bigger than any dog she had ever seen. Its body was stretched unnaturally long, its limbs twisted at odd angles, as if it had been broken and put back together wrong. And then it smiled. Claire's breath hitched. Dogs don't smile, but this thing did. Its lips curled back, revealing rows of jagged teeth, too many for a normal mouth. A wet, choking sound escaped its throat, like a laugh, but garbled. Claire took a step back. The floorboard creaked beneath her. The thing moved. A sudden blur of darkness. A sharp, gut-wrenching snap as its neck twisted toward her. Claire stumbled, reaching blindly for the lamp. Her fingers found the switch. Light flooded the room. The corner was empty. Her stomach twisted violently. She knew what she saw. The sheets on her bed were still crumpled. The paw print on the floor was still there. But the thing was gone. Claire stood frozen, heart hammering, waiting for something, anything, to happen. Minutes stretched. Nothing. She swallowed hard. Her body was trembling, every nerve on high alert. Had she imagined it? No. She could still feel it. watching, waiting. She didn't sleep that night. The next few days were a blur of exhaustion and paranoia. At work, Claire could barely focus. Every shadow in the diner seemed to stretch a little too far. Every noise made her jump. Greg noticed. "You look like hell," he said, frowning as she fumbled with a coffee cup. "I'm fine," she muttered, though she knew it was a lie. She hadn't been fine since that night, since the thing in the corner, since the paw prints kept appearing. Every morning, without fail, a new one waited for her. Sometimes near the door, sometimes beside her bed. It was always wet, always fresh, like something had been inside her room. Then the nightmares began. She was in the diner, alone. The lights flickered overhead, the hum of the neon sign outside buzzing unnaturally loud. She turned. The dog was there, sitting in the middle of the floor, staring at her with those black, empty eyes. But something was wrong. Its mouth was open, not panting, just open, too wide, far too wide. And inside, where there should have been a tongue or teeth, there was a face. Human, mouth twisted in a silent scream. Claire jerked awake, gasping. Her room was dark, silent. Then, from the hallway, a low, wet growl. Claire clamped a hand over her mouth, stifling a whimper. It was here. It had always been here. Walter was waiting outside the diner the next morning. Claire barely held herself together as she rushed toward him. "Walter," she gasped, grabbing his arm. It's real, and it's in my house." His face darkened. "It's marked you." Claire shuddered. "How do I stop it?" Walter hesitated. "There's a way," he admitted, "but it's not easy." "I don't care," Claire said. "Tell me." Walter exhaled slowly. "You have to return the gift." Claire blinked. "What?" "The food," Walter said. "You fed it. You acknowledged it. That's why it won't leave. It sees you as one of its own now. The only way to break the bond is to give something back." Claire's skin crawled. "What do I have to give?" Walter looked away. And Claire realized. Not what. Who? Her blood ran cold. Walter's voice was barely a whisper. "You have to feed it someone else." Claire felt like the ground had been ripped out from beneath her. Feed it someone else. Walter's words echoed in her mind, cold and absolute. She stared at him, waiting for him to take it back, to tell her there was another way. But his face remained grim, his silence suffocating. Her stomach churned. "You're telling me I have to sacrifice someone?" Walter's gaze didn't waver. "It's not a dog, Claire. It's a hunter. It won't leave without taking what it's owed." Claire shook her head. "That's insane. I can't just kill someone." Walter sighed, rubbing his temples. "You think you're the first?" The words made her skin crawl. He nodded toward the town beyond the diner windows. "This thing has been here for generations. People don't talk about it, but they know. Every few years, someone new feeds it without realizing what they've done. And when it comes for them, they have two choices: give it someone else or be taken themselves." Claire's breath hitched. She thought of the nightmares, the endless, watching eyes, the whispers that slid beneath her skin, and the wet paw prints that never stopped appearing. She gripped the counter to steady herself. "There has to be another way." Walter hesitated. "There might be," he said finally, "but it's risky." Claire's head snapped up. "Tell me." Walter's jaw tightened. "You can try to face it, break the bond by rejecting it. But that means letting it in. If you fail," he exhaled sharply, "you won't just die, Claire. It'll take you. And once it does, you'll be like the others." Claire's hands trembled. "The others?" Walter's face darkened. "The ones inside it. The ones that scream in its mouth." Claire barely made it home before the sun dipped below the horizon. Her hands shook as she locked the door behind her. Walter had told her what she needed to do. Stand her ground. Let it come. Don't run. Don't scream. Don't give in. She swallowed thickly, forcing herself into the center of her living room. The lights were off. The only illumination came from the street lamp outside, casting jagged shadows against the walls. She closed her eyes, and she waited. The house was silent. Then, scratch. The sound of nails dragging against wood. Her breath hitched. It was at the door. The air grew thick, the temperature plummeting. Claire's fingers curled into fists, her nails digging into her palms. A deep, wet growl vibrated through the walls. And then, the door creaked open. Claire's eyes snapped open. A shape stood in the doorway. Tall. Wrong. Its head was too low, its limbs too long. Its breath came in ragged, uneven gasps, as if its lungs were filling with something thick and wet. And then, slowly, it lifted its head. Those eyes. Black. Endless. Claire's body screamed at her to run. But she didn't. The thing stepped inside. Claire felt the weight of it pressing against her chest. The air thinning as if the room itself was shrinking around her. It was testing her, waiting for her to break. She clenched her fists. You don't owe me. The thing stopped. For a split second, the air shifted. Then it lunged. A blur of black rushed toward her. Claire's vision exploded into darkness. She was somewhere else. The air was thick and humid, the darkness suffocating. A wet, pulsing sound filled the space around her. Then, whispers. Low, twisting. Join us. Claire turned. Shapes lurked in the shadows, shifting inside the blackness. Not human. Not anymore. Their eyes glistened from within the void. Mouths stretched too wide. Hands that weren't hands at all. Let go. A cold touch slid up her arm. Claire thrashed, jerking away. No. The voices grew angry. The darkness tightened. It was pulling her down, dragging her into something endless. No, no, no. Claire fought. Her mind clawed against the void, pushing, shoving, rejecting. And then, light, blinding, burning. A piercing shriek tore through the air. Not human, not animal. Something in between. And suddenly, she was falling. Claire gasped awake. She was on the floor of her apartment, drenched in sweat, her heart hammering against her ribs. The room was silent. Still, she turned her head, breath caught in her throat. The front door was wide open. Slowly, she pushed herself up. The paw prints were gone. The weight in the air had lifted. And for the first time in days, Claire felt alone. Not watched, not hunted, just alone. A shuddering breath left her lips. She had done it. She had faced it. And she had won. The next morning, Claire left town. She didn't tell Greg. Didn't say goodbye to Walter. She packed her things, started her car, and never looked back. But as she drove past the diner one last time, her stomach twisted. There, sitting at the edge of the parking lot, a black dog, still, watching, its eyes locked onto hers. Claire's grip tightened on the wheel. She blinked, and it was gone. Her breath shuddered. Had she escaped? Or had it simply let her go? Claire would wait to find out. She pressed the gas pedal and never stopped driving.